Rule-based and knowledge-based behaviour are only called into play after the individual has become conscious of a problem. Rule-based behaviour will be controlled by existing rules, such as a take-off drill. Knowledge-based behaviour deals with non-standard problems, that is, events that have no procedure, such as a mid-air collision. Rule-based behaviour is that for which a routine or procedure has been learned. Unlike skill-based behaviour, rule-based behaviour always requires a conscious decision to initiate the behaviour. Consider the case of being asked to fly from Denham to Shoreham. One cannot say, "I've never done that before. I can't go." The rule-based behaviour solution would require you to follow set procedures for correct preparation of the flight. Reference will be made to the correct maps and documents to obtain the required information of the route. The relevant NOTAMs will be checked, the weather information collated, details of the destination aerodrome will be looked up, and so on. Flying SIDS and STARS are good examples of rule-based behaviour. In short, pilots have rules and procedures which regulate both normal flight, such as Hazel checks before a stall practice, and abnormal flight, such as emergency drills. The rules are usually written down, and the more frequently used may be stored in the long-term memory, perhaps in the form of a mnemonic, such as FRIDA, the en route check. It is in the field of procedural training, that is rule-based behaviour, that simulation is used most frequently, since pilots cannot thoroughly practice emergencies whilst actually flying. Some procedures are too complicated to be reliably memorised, and thus they must be kept in some documentary form, such as checklists. Even in these cases, the pilot must retain a basic memory of how to access the correct information, for example by understanding the index. Thus, the general practice is to learn the immediate actions for an emergency, such as making a Mayday call, with the required information: Mayday, 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 Golf Alpha Bravo Charlie Delta, Seneca 10 miles west of Wickham, 3,500 feet, heading 270, 4 on board, fire left engine, intend to land at Oxford. The subsequent actions, such as following the checklist and switching off systems, can be done later. Rule-based behaviours are generally robust in practice and have many strengths. Standardised procedures enable each crew member to know what other crew members should do in a selected situation, thereby acting as monitors of each other's actions. Errors of rule-based behaviour usually occur because of the application of the incorrect rule. For example, by confusing two red warning lights, such as the undercarriage unsafe light and the low voltage light. The use of auditory and visual warnings goes some way to resolving this problem. If a rule is used mistakenly, it will generally be a well-established, rather than a little-used rule, strong but wrong. It will also frequently have an application in a similar environment. For example, the throttle may be moved instead of the mixture lever, both of which are used with a similar frequency and at a similar time. It is unlikely that the radio frequency will be changed in place of lowering the flaps, because their functions are so dissimilar, even though they may be physically located next to each other. Departure from established rules is highly dangerous. For example, a ground proximity warning must not be ignored, and the mandatory rule to pitch up with full power should be obeyed. These prescribed rules are known as Standard Operating Procedures, SOPs, and should cover most eventualities. But where they do not, the pilot must rely on his experience and knowledge, which is what we will now look at. Finally, we come to knowledge-based behaviour, which is that applied when no procedure has been learned or established, such as when completing a jigsaw puzzle. However, situations where there are no rules or procedures to which a pilot can turn will be increasingly uncommon on sophisticated aircraft, because pilot involvement has been designed out as much as possible. Where a novel problem does occur, the pilot must use his knowledge and experience to design a plan for dealing with the situation. And this is done by the central decision-maker of the brain, using all the external stimuli and all of the information in the long-term memory. Humans will, if possible, avoid knowledge-based problem solving because it is harder and more time-consuming than rule-based solutions. If one can fit one's actions within a well-tried procedure, one may feel more confident of the outcome than if one were to create a new solution. Professor James Reason has produced his generic error modelling system, which traces the path of human problem solving through the 3 behaviour types of Rasmussen. His conclusion is that, when confronted with a problem, human beings are strongly biased to search for and find a prepackaged solution at the rule-based level before resorting to the far more effortful knowledge-based level, even where this is demanded at the outset. Only when people become aware that successive cycling around this rule-based route is failing to offer a satisfactory solution will the move down to the knowledge-based level take place. Take some time to examine this generic error modelling system model. However, knowledge-based behaviour is more prone to error than skill-based or rule-based behaviour for the reasons that follow. Where a decision at the knowledge-based level is necessary, the use of mental models is required, utilising all of the information available to the pilot from his environment. Evaluation of evidence, however, is not a straightforward process, and the weight placed on individual items will be influenced by a number of factors. The pilot will be heavily influenced by the probability of an occurrence. For example, a bang heard on takeoff could be a tyre bursting, a bird strike, or an engine failure. A burst tyre is the most probable cause, and so pilots may carry out initial drills for that event. Previous experience will also influence a decision. If a pilot recently experienced a component failure, such as an ASI not reading properly, he may look no further than for a faulty instrument if another faulty reading occurs. Whereas the cause may be something different, such as a bird strike to the pitot tube and leading edge of the wing, which will have additional consequences. The incoming information may be incomplete or ambiguous. The redness of the sky could be a setting sun, but it could also be the effect of a volcanic eruption, with the attendant dangers of flying through ash. Once a theory has been formed about a problem, such as not knowing one's exact position, people are reluctant to move away from that theory and start again with a new one. This is especially true if time is short, perhaps as the pilot has to comply with an ATC clearance. Or, if the captain has a strong personality, when he may find it difficult to start again, as it will be a difficult admission of error on his part. Individuals will seek information to confirm their theory rather than to test and challenge it. This is known as confirmation bias. This extract from an aviation chart shows 2 towns with remarkably similar features. Each has a major road running from northwest to the southeast, shown coloured green. Each has a railway, also running from the northwest to the southeast, shown coloured blue. And each has a railway running from east to roughly west, shown coloured pink. The towns are a similar size, and they are both the same distance from the coast. Add some scattered cloud and overconfidence, and we have the components for a wrong decision. The thing that is required for a correct decision is independent confirmation. In this case, a bearing could be taken from Dover VOR or Lid VOR. A bearing from Manston NDB would be unhelpful, as Canterbury and Ashford are on a similar bearing. Even if the pilot reviews his decision, there is a tendency for him to review only the things that he has considered, and in the same order, causing a check-off illusion, rather than a systematic review of the relevant material. Out of sight, out of mind is a wholly appropriate saying for problem solvers. For example, an old battery may have been left some time ago in a storage compartment, but has now leaked and corroded some electrical cables. It has also been found that people have greater difficulty in identifying symptoms than in producing plausible solutions. This is reflected in the fact that everyone is happy if a reasonable, non-threatening explanation can be given. In an incident in Malaysia, a Boeing flew through the tops of some trees on the approach, and the noise was interpreted as an engine surge, a clearly less blameworthy event than a low approach. Only the subsequent demonstration of foliage in the undercarriage persuaded the crew that the approach may have been a little low.